used or repossessed car, Automart na yan.
Sa panahon ngayon, napaka-importante ng salitang value for money pagdating sa mga gadgets or kung ano-ano man, at lalo na pagdating sa kotse. Napapansin namin na trend ngayon, mga compact sedan, pero ang presyo nila pang subcompact. And the latest one to follow that trend is this, the Geely Emgrand. Usually, pag sinabing Geely, ang impression, crossover siya or MPV. So, you have the Ascara, the Coolray, and the Okavango. So, this is the first Geely sedan in years to be offered in the Philippines. So, if you have to recall, a couple of years ago, more than a decade ago, nagkaroon ng Geely sa Pilipinas, pero hindi gano'n nag-take off. Pero under the new management, kita naman natin they're doing a very good job of spreading the good news of Geely around the country, and they're actually one of the fastest growing manufacturers in the Philippines today, and it sounds like a very promising product sa design pa lang. First impressions, medyo European yung design, at least opinion ko yun, ano? Mainly because the designer of Geely, the lead designer of Geely, actually was the lead designer of Volvo. So you can see some elements ng European inspired design sa kotseng to, lalo na you have these hard lines, very clean, very simple lines all over the front end of this car. Pero hindi siya boring tignan. You have this wide grille, and I say that gives this not so subcompact sedan a lot of road presence. Plus, you have LED DRLs that add to the attention-seeking factor of this car. So as I mentioned, the front end is very clean and very simple, and that theme continues all the way to the side. You have a strong character line that runs from the fender hanggang sa likod and actually connects the tip of the headlight to the tip of the taillight. And actually, that's a very common thing to do in luxury cars. It gives that very strong looking feeling, no? As some designers would explain, it actually gives a little more strength sa mga panels, no? And dito kitang-kita mo yung pagkahaba ng wheelbase niya, and in fact, the Emgrand has one of the longest or the longest wheelbases in its segment. So I'm expecting a lot of room inside this car. Emgrand measures over 4.6 meters long, so more of kakategory niya mga Civic, Corolla Altis, mga ganon. And yet, yung presyo niya again is pang subcompact, but we'll get to that later. Siguro if I was gonna improve on one thing, yung roof line sa likod medyo baba lang ng konti, but that will compromise the headroom, and the point of a car like this is to maximize space. So anyway, let's move on over to the back. Pero yung likod yung isa sa mga favorite parts ko, mainly because of the taillight design. So there's a lot of inspiration here from other European cars. Ang pinaka naalala ko dito, it's a bit of a mix of an Audi and a hint of the 90s Subaru legacy. But don't take that as an offense to this car because ang ganda tignan nung ilaw niya. And mamaya ipapakita ko, may light show tong light bar na to. Hanep, diba? And another thing to observe about the Emgrand, kung napapansin nyo, mababa yung hati nung trunk. That means hindi nyo kailangan mataas magbuhat pag magsasakay sa trunk. Mababa yung leftover niya, so hindi rin sasakit yung likod nyo pag magsasakay kayong gamit, no? And it's also wide. So speaking of the trunk, you just have to open it with the press of a button, and there you go. It's 500 liters. It's not a totally square shape. Some compact, subcompact sedans have a much wider area dito, but still 500 liters pa rin yan. Marami ka masasakay dyan. The only car ahead of it really is the all-new Honda City, but everything else less than 500 liters. At bago tayo pumasok sa loob ng Emgrand, meron pa isang neat feature dito. So all you have to do is go close to it, wait for a bit, lalo na kung may dala ka, and parang magic. Plus, may light show ka pa. Okay, promise, lasa talaga to. Bago tayo sumakay sa Emgrand, kailangan ko pakita tong feature na to. So let's say mainit, bumarada ka sa ilalim ng araw, so kailangan mo palabasin yung init sa loob ng kotse, no? So all you have to do is press the unlock button at bababa ng kusa yung bintana. And not just the front windows, lahat yan bababa. Pero pwede mo rin ipala isara by pressing the lock button. Ayan, tumakit na sila lahat. Okay, sakay na talaga tayo. So yung isang fact na sobrang proud si Geely sa Emgrand is 85% of the materials used inside the Emgrand is soft touch. Top of the dash, okay, malambot. Pati itong gitna, doors, dito, armrest. Okay, ito hard plastic pero less than 1 million tong coaching na to eh. So kung gusto mo yan, pati yan malambot. Baka ibang price range na yung hanap nyo. But anyway, it's actually very impressive, no? And you get this impression that you get more for what you paid for. Yan yung value for money na sinasabi natin. And syempre, gusto mo rin yung feeling na ito yung binayaran mo and you get more for what you pay for, diba? So, ang sarap ng feeling na yon. The look of the dashboard, ang naalala ko sa kanya, may konting halo siya ng Coolray tsaka ng Okavango. Lalo na tong digital instrument cluster tsaka tong floating screen. And another element, design element na medyo inspired from Europe, itong aircon panel na to. So, parang integrated yung vents niya. Pero nagagalaw siya, hindi siya fixed. So, pwede mo iusog-usog yan. And instead of buttons and knobs, meron kang toggle switch dito. So, nandito naka-house yung start button mo, hazard, air conditioning. Now, most of the controls of the car are in the infotainment screen. And you can adjust your driving modes and other car settings dito. So, that's something usually found sa mga mas mahal na kotse. And in some compact cars pa nga, hindi mo makukuha itong features na to. So, it's, again, that adds to the value proposition of this car. Also, may sunroof ka, pero yun lang, medyo may gripe ako na kailangan mong pumunta sa menu para mabukas or masara yung sunroof. Wala siyang button dito, unlike some cars. But it's a minor inconvenience. But I wish kung i-facelift man itong model na to in a few years, lagyan na nila ng switch dito. Like its other Geely counterparts like the Coolray and the Ascara. Pagdating naman sa mga lalagyan, solve ka dito. So may cubby hole ka dito sa driver's side. Pretty rare in this segment. So, tapos may dalawa ka pang shelf dito. And itong area na to, modular. So, pwede kang may dalawang cup holder dito or pwede mo alisin yan para mas malaki yung space mo sa cubby hole na to. And also, I have to say, ang labot din ng armrest na to. And that's so handy when it comes to long driving trips. Pag medyo gusto mo mag-chill, pwede ka mag-ganito. And another thing I like, personally, is mataas to. Like, some people don't like it. Gusto nila parang may feeling mas may extra space dito. But ito mataas to. So there's that feeling na mas driver focused, mas driver oriented siya compared to other cars. And kumbaga that cockpit feeling, kung mahilig ka mag-drive, you will appreciate this high center console. Other features dito sa Emgrand for less than 1 million pesos, aside from the sunroof and the soft touch materials and etc., meron kang power seats. O, diba? Again, uncommon feature to sa price range niya. You don't get that often. So now, start na natin tong Emgrand to show you what the digital instrument cluster looks like now. So 12 inches yan. Ang naka-display is your revolutions per minute or RPM and your speed plus tire pressure. At ito pa, meron pang seatbelt reminder, hindi lang sa harap. Meron din seatbelt reminder for the rear passenger. So if you're bringing children with you, please buckle them up in the back seat. Also, may display ng tire pressure, your fuel consumption, and of course, your fuel range. I just wish pwede mong palitan yung screen. By that, I mean, pwede ka mag-scroll left or right para may gusto kang mas naka-display or ganyan. Because that's a feature naman seen in most of its rivals. So, dun lang siya medyo, sana may dinagdag pa. But again, it's pretty comprehensive for what it is. A little more flair, a little more design would have been nice. But all in all, digital, and very premium feeling here at the front. So you've got the front covered mostly. But before that pala, less than 1 million pesos, may cruise control ka pa. Ayos, diba? So okay, let's go to the back na. So, di ba mention ko kanina yung wheelbase ng kotse, no? So, ito yung resulta niyan. There's a lot of legroom here. So, in the other videos, baka napansin nyo, uy, bukang mas malaking legroom sa mga dati. Pero kasi itong upuan na to, nakaset para sa matangkad na tao. Hindi to nakaset sa height ko. 5'4" lang kasi ako. So, ito nakaset sa mas matangkad na tao. And as you can see, may footroom ka pa, laki pa ng knee room mo. And, you know, you can move around. So, yun yung advantage ng long wheelbase and yung general size niya. Other perks dito sa likod, you have speakers here. Nawala yung soft touch dun sa harap, hard plastic siya dito sa likod. But again, personally, I don't mind it because how often are you gonna sit here at the back? May aircon vents ka pa dito sa likod and may USB port plus a cubby hole here and 2 map pockets behind the front seats. So the space is good, you know, you got a fair bit of features here at the back, stuff like that. Pagdating sa headroom, okay, I'm not the best judge for headroom, but I would say it's just right for taller people, although some people might say na medyo nakakain ng space yung sunroof. If you don't want the sunroof, you get the entry-level model, but you don't get some of the toys here, but even the entry-level model, it's kind of busog na rin with the features though, but we'll get to that next time. Kung may gusto ko dito idagdag sa back seats, it would be a rear armrest sana. That would complete the package dito sa likod. But other than that, it's, you know, I wouldn't mind staying here at the back. So kung familiar kayo sa Geely, napansin nyo, lahat ng modelo nila turbo, di ba? So yung Emgrand din ba? Ito na natin. Hindi siya turbo, pero that's not bad news. Explain ko kung bakit. So powering the Emgrand is a 1.5 liter non-turbocharged engine with 102 horsepower and 142 Newton meters of torque. Siyempre may mga magsasabi dyan na bakit hindi yung turbo na lang yung nilagay dito, hindi ba bitin yan or stuff like that. Explain natin kung anong segment po na nilalabanan nito. It's fighting in the subcompact class. Yes, yung dimensions nga pang compact, but when you look at the price, sa lower segment siya lumalaban. If they put the 1.5 liter turbo 3 here from the Coolray, tataas di hamak presyo niyan. And given that the segment, the C segment, isn't as strong as it used to be, isipin nyo, mas malakas benta pag B segment and B segment pricing. So if Geely raised the prices to accommodate the 1.5 liter turbo, mas konti mabibenta nila neto. And if you compare to the rest of its competitors, mga ganun din yung power nila. And in fact, 142 Newton meters, medyo malapit siya sa Honda City at 145 Newton meters naman yon. Although, some cars have slightly more horsepower, bawi ka naman sa hatak dito. So, first impressions muna tayo. Hindi muna tayo magfo-full road test. We can save that for another time. But, hey, let's take the simple test drive route. And so far, ang nararamdaman ko dito is ang gaan niya dalhin. And what's even more surprising is yung pull niya, yung hatak niya, kasi this car has a CVT with 8 simulated gears, no? But the way it pulls, the way it responds, medyo nagulat ako kasi para siyang dual clutch gumalaw. That means you get a more immediate response compared to other CVTs that take a while bago umarangkada. And I would say that's a positive point and you don't really feel it. Yung mga iba kasi umaangal na, ay bakit CVT ganyan? You have to try it first bago kayo umangal. Other impressions, the steering, very very light. And kahit simpleng likod though, napapansin ko, medyo nagsisway tayo dito. But that's not to mean it's a bad handling car. Again, we're driving it at town speeds or city speeds, and this car wasn't designed anyway for high performance driving. Pagdating sa ride though, dun siya bawing-bawi kasi ang lambot ng suspension. And that means, kunwari, long distance kayo magmamaneho, mga ganun, hindi kayo mapapagod kagad. And speaking of which, and comfort, no? Ang lambot din ng upuan, very supportive, and it's also worth noting na ang ganda din ng lower back support dito. And that's often underrated in this segment. Kasi most seats here, medyo flat lang yung dating. Pero ito, may konting curve na pa ganun para mas may support yung lower back mo. And for a subcompact car, masasabi ko tahimik din siya. Ang napapansin ko lang na noise dito is from the tires, but if you want to replace the tires as early as now, sige, why not? It'll offer a much quieter ride, it'll offer a much quieter riding experience and whatnot. And speaking of the riding experience, kung napansin nyo, nasa likod din natin ang isa pang ka-Automart, si Kyle.
Hello everyone.
So Kyle, kamusta naman dyan sa likod? I've said my impressions dito sa harap, and I think, you know, it's a baby cruiser. No, when you're driving it, like, hindi ka mapapabilis ng maneho. Mas gusto mo, yung sinasabi nilang takbong chubby lang. Kumbaga, chill ka lang.
Actually, I do really agree with Anton, no? Kasi yung Emgrand naman, it's not trying to be sporty in any way. In fact, dito, pag nakaupo ka sa likod, it's more similar feeling to something like a Toyota Camry. Kumbaga, napaka-supportive yung seats. Talagang mukhang dinesign siya for the rear seat passenger rin in mind. Yung thigh support ko, very supportive yung dito sa likod ng lower back ko, yung tinatawag na lumbar. Maganda rin siya, and generally, you don't really get these types of parang attention to detail unless you go up to the size ng Camry na, which is mid-size sedan. Pero yung nga, nafe-feel ko rin nga na kahit mabagal tayo and we're turning, there is a significant amount of, you just know this car is not meant to be driven sportily. However, kung puro city driving ka lang or kahit mag-highway driving ka lang na diretsuhan lang, well, the Emgrand is a very good car for that. And na-mention ni Anton the tires. We can't really complain much about the tires kasi, I mean, the car is pretty cheap. Again, pricing later. But you can easily replace them naman kung naiingayan ka sa kanila. And for the price, really, we cannot complain.
May idadagdag lang ako, Kyle, no? Napansin ko lang, so medyo napaapa ako sa preno kanina. What I like about the brakes, no, progressive siya, hindi siya yung kahit yung gaganunin mo yung daliri ng paa mo, hindi ka yung susubsob sa manibela.
Very
progressive.
Euro style brakes niya, no?
Okay siya. I was expecting makajut yung preno niya, pero hindi eh. That means yung mga nasanay sa mga mas lumang kotse, maka-adjust sila kagad dito. And hindi sila yung may hilo nila yung mga pasahero nila sa likod, kumbaga.
Maybe it's really akin to kasi well, may somewhat of Volvo technology nga. So they really took the European style braking feel for this one. I like it. As a passenger, hindi rin ako masusuka, hindi ako mabibigla pag pumipreno si Anton sa harap. So overall, enjoyable ride whether or not you're the driver or nasa likod ka.
Like, sobrang like the pedals very light. Yung accelerator, napansin ko lang, mas may laban compared to other cars I've tried before.
Yung
pero
bigat,
may bigat eh.
Oo.
Compared to mga Vios, mga Almera, mga ganon, no? But again, that's something a bit European. So, yung pedals nga, mga iba, baka may aangal na may kabigatan yung silinyador. But the brakes are great. I like the brake pedal feel of this car.
Yung responsiveness ng throttle niya, kumusta? Okay naman ba?
Okay siya.
Naka-anong mode ka ba ngayon? Comfort?
Naka-comfort lang ako ngayon.
Comfort.
So yun, speaking of which, no, may mga drive select modes din tong Emgrand, hindi kong sabihin Cool Ray, no? Pero kasi, speaking of Cool Ray, pareho sila ng platform kasi. So, I've tried one before, and na-impress ako with the chassis, like how good the ride was. And yun naman, na-surprise ako sa handling nun. Ng Cool Ray, kahit crossover siya. But this one, siguro pang talaga. Kumbaga si Cool Ray, yung target market medyo bagets when it comes to the styling lalo na eh. But with this one, like, gets ko kung bakit nilambutan yung suspension. At all in all, and if you say it's comfy there at the back, then I'll take your word for it. Kasi nanggaling ka sa mga chedeng. So if you say it's comfy, then it's really comfy. So usapang presyo naman tayo ngayon. Magkano nga ba ang Geely Emgrand? There are two variants available. What we have here is the premium variant, and the one below it is the comfort variant. So yung comfort, that starts at 798,000 pesos minus 50 sa special promos ngayon ng Geely. And itong premium model starts at 908,000. Again, minus 50 thanks to the special promos. Kung gusto nyo matignan, I suggest visiting Geely Fairview because the wonderful folks from Geely Fairview lent us this particular unit. So maraming salamat sa mga tao doon. So anyway, 908,000 minus 50k, of course special promo muna yun. But even if you don't include the discount, nakita nyo naman yung features and what our first impressions are of this car. And for that price, mukhang panalo siya. Of course, wala pa rin tatalo if we take it for a longer test drive. We have it for a couple of days and whatnot, and we'll tell you what it's like to live with. But for now, pagdating sa first impressions, solid tong Geely Emgrand. Ang curious din ako, matry yung comfort model. So, how would it feel like even with less things inside, ganon. But that's a video for another day. Pero kung curious kayo sa mga iba pang Geely models, particularly second-hand or repossessed Geely models, head on down to Automart.ph at tandaan lang, kung used cars ang hanap nyo, i-Automart na yan. This has been Anton Andres. Like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching.